Welcome, everyone. We are 1 week late this month. We normally would have the first week, but of course we were all celebrating the 4th of July. I hope you had a good celebration, and I think it's so great that we still do that. And believe it or not, we still, in my belief, and probably I hope everyone here still lives in the greatest country in the world, and very proud to say. It is customary for the Board of Commissioners to begin our meeting with a prayer by the city commissioners. And during that time, you are welcome to stand and join us in the prayer. You're welcome to use the time for your own prayer if you like, or you're welcome certainly to use it for a moment of silence or any reason you may have on your mind. And we do also do a pledge of allegiance to the flag, which point out all the allegiance in. And at this time, I'd like to call on Commissioner Dan Cone for the invocation. Dan.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you again for another wonderful day, Lord. Lord, we just thank you that we did have the opportunity to celebrate the freedoms that we have in this country, Lord, and we do think still that we live in the greatest country in the world, Lord, and we just thank you for that. Forgive us, Lord, when we take you so much for granted, Lord, for all the wonderful things that you provide for us each and every day. Lord, just pray now this morning that we do the work of Nash County, Lord, that everything we do here would be pleasing in your sight, Lord, and we would do it for all the citizens of Nash County, Lord, and we would just give you the praise and the honor and the glory for it. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're now on item number 4. We had 2 meetings in June the 7th and June the 21st. You have those listed in your packet. At this time, I entertain any corrections, any additions, or a motion for approval.
Move for approval. Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second.
Second.
By Commissioner Outlaw, Commissioner Harrington, and Commissioner Wells on the second as well. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, let it be known, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, by like sign. Minutes stand approved. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Great job, you always do. Item 5 is the public comment section on our agenda, and if there's anyone here today that wishes to speak to the commissioners about any item that is not on the agenda or is not a public hearing, this is the time that we're certainly glad to hear from you. We do have a sign-up period out front before the meeting, up to the time we begin the meeting. And I had one person to sign up, but if you happen to miss that suggestion that we have, you're certainly welcome to let us know that, and we'd be glad to hear from you. I'll take the ones that signed up first, and you think I need to go over everything, or we good there? Okay. Kind of loud mouth anyway, I guess. But Kurt reminded me my mic was off. But anyway, we had one person to sign up with, which was a Dorothy Battle, and Miss Battle, we'd be glad to hear from you at this time. I was about to say I don't see Miss Battle, but I do see her now. Okay. I thought you would be here. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. Dorothy Gibson Battle, 13343 Taylor Store Road, Nashville, NC 27856. Giving honor to God for our presence in this Board of Commissioners, I do thank Commissioner Davis and Mr. Tyson because we have now begun the task of moving forward to remedy the problem of the illegal firearms training of Ted Williams, formerly Yard Dog and now called Force. Also, I do thank Commissioner Belfield for speaking up for the rights of my community as Nash County residents, although he is not my district representative. Mr. Belfield, your valor is to be commended. Since the Planning Board issued the ordinance violation against Mr. Williams and his range, there has only been a small amount of shooting there, and for this, we are so thankful. The officials in this room control the future growth and quality of life for the people of Nash County. Each of you are sworn in or affirmed to protect and serve the people that elected you or pay your salary. It is neglect by your office to do otherwise. Some of you arise in the morning, strap on a gun, put on a uniform, and pin a badge on your chest to make your work official. Your job is to administer the law and make fair judgment equally for the good and honor and harmony of society. It is unjust to ignore white-collar crime because of a brotherhood pledge rather than apply to all unlawful acts, regardless of private relationships, Your colleagues hear your private conversations, know the choices you make in serving the citizens and using your authority. Someone knows you, your behavior, and how you conduct the business of this county. Pop-up shooting ranges in Nash County are an egregious and illegal act. They didn't just start, and we all know that. Mr. Williams is going to fight all the way to keep his illegal range going and has relied on friendships, popularity, brotherhoods, and associations to shield him from enforcement of the law. He is now being exposed, and those that protect and support his behavior alongside him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Battle. I'm thinking you probably have on your schedule July the 26th, Board of Adjustment appeal hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for being here this morning. Was there anyone else in the audience that wished to speak to an item not on the agenda? Okay. I did get one email that I want to read into the record that I was asked to read under public comment. And I will read it as given, and the board can absorb it. And it is an item that is on the agenda, but is not a public hearing. We were informed, and it comes from Vanis and Deborah Hardy. The email said, we were informed by Mr. Z. Lamb on Friday morning, 7/9, that the noise ordinance was on the agenda for Monday morning, 7/12. With this short notice and with us being out of town, we are requesting that this item be deferred till your August meeting. We, as well as other citizens, would like to address the commissioners to inform them again of how the decision to exempt propane cannons from the present noise ordinance will adversely affect so many lifestyles and lead to future conflict. Thank you for your consideration in deferring the matter. Vanis and Deborah Hardy, and I received that on Saturday morning over the weekend. All right, that concludes the public comments, and our first item on the agenda moving forward is item number 6, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing on conditional use rezoning request CU 210603 to rezone 164.5 acres on Strickland Road from RA to RA-20 CU for the Strickland Road subdivision. I got another note over the weekend. Mr. Williams, do you wish to, before I open up anything on this item, I understand you may want to speak to the board.
Yes, sir, please. My name is Cecil Williams, 6765 Jordan Road, Elm City. I've already spoke to some of the people that are here, but I became aware of some easements on this property at the planning board meeting that weren't shown on and I don't really require it, but they weren't shown on the tax maps. And so we hastily tried to address those issues with the easements, and I don't think we've been successful. We had a plan that we could have presented today, but I wasn't satisfied with the plan. I hadn't had a chance to share it with the people that have been affected or were going to be affected or not. Anyway, and I had apologized to them, and I apologize to anybody that's been inconvenienced this morning by coming here to hear this, and I wish to have this item tabled until the August planning board meeting to give us time to speak with the affected people and to get further clarifications for myself and for the planning board, I believe.
Okay. I will ask the board for a motion, Mr. Williams, but of course, I know you realize that I wish you had been able to do this after the planning board before we did public hearing notices
Yes, sir.
and the
I
county
understand,
expended
yes.
public funds in those
Yes, sir.
process, but once the agenda gets printed and goes out to our sunshine list, I've got to stick with the agenda is the
Yes.
reason I asked you to be here this morning
That's
if you
correct.
wanted to make that request.
Yes, sir.
But it's a board matter, and does anybody on the board have a question to Mr. Williams about his request? Seeing any, I would entertain any motion concerning his request at this time.
Make a motion to accept his request.
Which is to table it
To
till
table.
August.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to table this to a time Pacific, which is our August 1st meeting. Is there a second to that motion? And a second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the motion? Prior to moving forward, Mr. Durham, am I okay with you legally what I'm doing?
Well, I think you are. My question is, he said table it to the August planning board meeting.
I'm so sorry if I said planning board.
I meant commissioner.
I did, sir.
I did not catch
You're
that.
fine.
Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion stands approved.
Thank you all so much, and I do sincerely apologize. Thank you.
And on behalf of the board, for the people that are here to hear this, we too apologize for you taking off or whatever you need to do this morning and be here. But maybe it will be worked out with you, whatever your issues may be, and we will certainly like to see you back in August. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the meeting in August is the 2nd. I'm just wondering if that's enough time for Mr. Williams. It is?
I asked him about that over the weekend, Mr. Lamb. He assured me it was, so
Okay.
that's why I let it go at that.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify that because the meeting, today's meeting was convened, there is not a requirement for additional public notice. So for anyone present, it specifically will be August the 2nd in this room for the meeting to begin at 9 o'clock. So you might want to make a note of that. August the 2nd, Board of Commissioners regular meeting. That's going to be a Monday morning, the meeting to begin at 9 o'clock.
So you will not be doing additional notices for a public hearing?
We're not required to.
Okay. Any board member have any comment on that? Are you okay with that?
Can we do it anyway, just to make sure?
We can
that
send
everybody-
I think what would be more effective is if we were to send the letters, but not necessarily pay for the legal ad again, if that would be agreeable to the board. That'd be my suggestion. We send the letters to the property owners within 600 feet and forego the legal ad.
It's a board decision. What's the pleasure of the board? We can do, as Mr. Tyson pointed out, we could do legal ads. What does the board wish to do?
I think just send the letters is probably good enough.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? All right, seeing no comment, let's plan to do that then, sir.
So that letter will come out a little more than 10 days prior to the August 2nd meeting. Anyone who owns property within 600 feet will receive one. If you are not owning property within 600 feet and you'd like to receive one, just contact the planning department and ask to be added to the list.
I'm like Mr. Lamb, I'm a little bit skittish where we are because that's a short period of time. So, Cecil, if you would, just, if you see it's not going to happen, please let Mr. Tyson know as soon as possible, before those letters go out preferably.
And can I request that the signs, the rezoning signs seem to be, have got that those rezoning signs.
Reposted.
We will repost those in the same time frame that the letters go out.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank y'all. Okay, with that concluded, we'll move to item number 7. Item number 7 is another quasi-judicial public hearing on conditional use rezoning request CU 210601 to rezone 3.2 acres of Matthews Crossroad to General GC, General Commercial, CU for a general merchandise retail store. Oh, I'm having trouble reading this morning. I'll get cranked up here in a minute. Mr. Tyson?
The subject property is shown on the screen, highlighted in red. It's about 3¼ acres, owned by Joseph M. Braswell, who's deceased, located at the southern corner of Matthews Crossroads. Of course, Matthews Crossroads is North NC Highway 58 and Edwards Road, southeast of the town of Castelia. You can see from the zoning map on the right-hand side that that area is currently uniformly zoned A1 agricultural. The site currently includes an existing residence. This is a survey of the existing conditions. So you see you have one dwelling here, a pump house in this area, a shed over here. All of that is proposed for demolition, but that is the current state of the property. The property is in the Tarr-Pamlico River Basin. It is not in a floodplain or a designated watershed protection overlay district, and it does not include any buffered streams. Ms. Carol Braswell Winstead, an heir to the property owner, has submitted this rezoning request to rezone the property to GCCU, General Commercial Conditional Use. And of course, you must identify the specific land use that is proposed for the property. In this case, it is a general merchandise retail store to be constructed and operated by the Dollar General Corporation. The GC zoning district is primarily intended to accommodate a wide range of retail, service, office, and high-density residential uses. They're typically located with access to major thoroughfares like North NC Highway 58 and urban services, and are intended to accommodate intensive commercial uses such as shopping centers, strip centers, business parks, as well as freestanding highway-oriented business establishments. Again, because this is a conditional request, the property would be restricted to being developed as a general merchandise retail store only, and only in accordance with the approved site plan, which we'll review shortly. The site plan, as seen here, proposes a 10,640 square foot retail store. That would be this block right here, with a 54 space paved parking lot. The parking lot would be accessible only from Edwards Road. The original design had an entrance on North NC 58, but the NCDOT requested that that be eliminated and the access be restricted to just Edwards Road, and the developer has accommodated that request with this iteration of the site plan. The southwestern portion of the lot, which will be behind the store on this end of the property, as you can see, will be reserved for an on-site septic system in this area, and then a stormwater management area back here behind the facility. The store will be served by a connection to Nash County Public Water Service with the water line that runs along North NC Highway 58. The parking lot will be screened from the adjacent road rights-of-way by a proposed vegetative buffer of understory trees and evergreen shrubs. And you can see that kind of dark line right here is the vegetative screening around the parking lot. And I believe that the applicant intends to leave as much of the wooded cover on this end of the property as they can as a natural buffer between the facility and the homes to the south. The land development plan, as you can see, is consistent with the request. The plan intentionally designates this circular area shown in red around the Matthews Crossroads as a rural commercial area. You can see that the entire area to be developed on the subject property falls within that node. This would be the first step toward accomplishing a conversion of this crossroads to a rural commercial area. Rural commercial areas are specifically designated at key road intersections in predominantly rural areas where limited business and commercial development is to be encouraged, provided that the proposed use does not require public sewer service, and it's intended to primarily serve a local customer base of surrounding residents. And of course, the proposed general merchandise store would not require public sewer service, as it's going to be accommodated by an on-site septic, and it will primarily be intended to serve a local customer base. Spot zoning, the conditional use rezoning may be considered reasonable spot zoning. As I stated, this would be the first step in converting this area to commercial as was foreseen by the 2006 Nash County Land Development Plan. The subject property is at the intersection with frontage along a major state highway. The request is explicitly consistent with the land use map, and the conditional nature of the request restricts the approved commercial use of the property to a general merchandise retail store only. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on June the 3rd and recommended approval. The Planning Board considered this request on June 21st. There were 2 local residents who addressed the board with concerns regarding the impact on their adjacent property values, noise, traffic safety, and the existing road conditions around the property. Mr. Lamb and Ms. Jennings are listed in your staff report along with their addresses. After that hearing, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of Consistency Statement A, finding the request to be reasonable, in the public interest, consistent with the Land Development Plan, and reasonable spot zoning. Number 2, the Planning Board recommended approval of the rezoning request itself to rezone the property from A1 to GCCU. And finally, number 3, the board recommended approval of the requested conditional use permit to authorize the construction of the general merchandise retail store. This will be a 3-motion process for the board. The board will need to adopt a consistency statement, either in preparation for approval or denial of the request. Motion number 2 will be to actually rezone the property. And motion number 3 will be to approve or deny the conditional use permit. Note that there are 5 conclusions that the board will be adopting findings for. Number 1, that the proposed site plan will satisfy the applicable requirements of our ordinance, and I can assure you that it will. Number 2, it will not materially endanger the public health or safety. Number 3, it will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. Number 4, it will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located. And number 5, it will be in general conformity with our land use plan. And then there are 4 development conditions that are suggested by both the TRC and the Planning Board for attachment to the permit. Mr. Brent Purdom with Triangle Site Design, who prepared the site plan, is here this morning to represent the request and to answer any questions that the board has. When we open the quasi-judicial public hearing, I will offer the staff report and all the related materials into the record as evidence for this hearing. And before we do that, I'll take any questions that you have on the staff report.
Any questions from board members at this time? Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion to go into the quasi-judicial hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a public hearing to hear any comments for or against the item number 7 on the agenda. We would ask that as you come up, you would be sworn in by the clerk before speaking. And if you would allow Megan to clean the podium between each speaker, that would be greatly appreciated as well, part of our COVID protocol at this time right on. So at this time, do I have anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? And since we're open, Mr. Tyson, your comments will be entered into the record.
Thank you.
By the clerk. One thing I failed to do earlier, and I apologize, is Mr. Bellfield is not with us this morning. He was chosen by the board to represent us at the NACO meeting, which is still in progress at this time, so he is in Washington, D.C., and that's the reason he's not here. He is on duty, but just not present. And if you would note that for the record, Madam Clerk, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have someone wishing to speak for or against this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
do you want me to swear Mr. Tyson first?
We'll see if it's necessary for me
Oh, okay.
to testify.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Morning.
If he speaks again, yes.
Okay. Right here. Mhm.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you
morning.
would place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Brent Purdom. I'm with Triangle Site Design. Like Mr. Tyson said, we developed the plans in coordination with planning, NCDOT. We also took into account DEQ design standards. Mr. Tyson pretty much said everything that we're trying to do. We are trying to leave that area that he mentioned as natural as possible on the left side, the western part of the property. We're trying to leave all those trees there. We're going to take down basically exactly what we need for the development and leave as much natural vegetation as possible between the properties. But if you guys have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
All right. Questions from board members?
Yeah.
Mr. Aaron?
He had a property owner that was concerned about the backside between his property and the store. That would be, like you said, be left natural with that tree separation between that property. He has concerns that later on you might develop it if it's not in the conditional use permit.
Right, yes, sir. So, yeah, we're going to try to leave as much natural as possible, and that's the only development on that property. They don't have any plans to try to do a second development, and then, even so, we'd have to go through an entire, another process to get it rezoned and everything. But that plan right there is what's proposed. And there's, we've had a lot of questions in the past on previous projects about property values. And we've never been able to find any data that shows that putting a commercial use like this jeopardizes value of residential properties nearby. In fact, they tend to pay more per acre for property to actually increase the value of land in that area when you look at appraisals. But other than that, we just can't find any data at all to show that it affects positive or negative.
Other question?
I guess, so anyway, the property owner shouldn't be concerned that later on, somebody else come in and own it, that they would not develop that wooded area between their property.
Correct. It can't be done at this point. Have to go through a whole nother process.
Okay.
Other questions? Sir, in your comment, you sound like you may do these in multiple areas for this particular client. Do you find this driveway requirement, not being able to get one on 58, is that occurring throughout the state? It's something that showed up in Nash County relatively recent, where they're real funny about giving driveways on a certain traffic count road. But any comments on that?
It has, in the last year, that's, DOT has gotten more strict on having two accesses. Once they do their traffic count.
Right.
But yes, last year, it's gotten more difficult to get two drives.
In the other areas or counties you work in?
Yes, sir. That's throughout the whole state. Well, we do basically from Raleigh east.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing.
Does that model work for your client okay?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Just curious about that. That wasn't related in any way. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here wish to speak in the public hearing for this matter? Mr. Tyson, I am going to ask you to come back up and be sworn in. I do have one question that I want to ask you about here. See no one else wishing to speak. Madam Clerk.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Along Commissioner Arrington's question, what do we have here in this document that guarantees those trees and so forth on the rear will stay there for that property owner or is it just a matter of it having to come back to us if they wish to come down? Is there anything here that gives them any protection in that?
So this property is going to be zoned conditional use, meaning that the entire boundary of the property is subject
under that.
to the agreement, and only things that are shown on the site plan may be developed.
Okay.
So any attempt to develop the southwestern end would require a trip back through the planning board and to this board for an amendment to that conditional use permit. So it could happen, but it could not happen without the specific consent of the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. That make it a little clearer, Mr. Arrington. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, sir. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Public hearing is now closed. It is a three-step process. Mr. Tyson, do you have anything else you needed to say? You good?
I'm good.
All right, first motion would, of course, be, as outlined by Mr. Tyson, is a consistency statement, A or B. And I'd entertain a motion at this time.
So moved, Mr. Chairman, we accept the consensus statement A.
Okay, and those items listed below. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw, Commissioner Combs. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Consistency statement A is adopted. Should have pointed out, it is in Commissioner Arrington's district. Next motion would be to approve or deny the zoning map amendment. I'd entertain a motion at this time.
So moved, Mr. Chair, we approve the zoning map amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the zoning map amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries, and the third motion required is a motion to approve or deny the conditional use permit.
So moved, Mr. Chair, we approve the conditional use permit.
Okay, with those items listed below that, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries as well. Thank you, sir, for being here this morning. We'll move on to item number 8, which is another quasi-judicial public hearing, request for CU 210602 to rezone 2.65 acres at 11792 East NC Highway 97 to general commercial CU for the existing restaurant. Mr. Tyson.
The property, as the chairman stated, is 2.65 acres. It's actually a portion of a larger 7.5 acre tract. So the red area on your screen is the portion that is up for rezoning, but it is contiguous with the land behind it back here for a larger 7.5 acre portion. The property is owned by Stephen D. and Kimberly Sauls. It's located at 11792 East NC Highway 97, Rocky Mount. If you will look at the zoning map on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that it is split between an R20 residential corridor that runs along Highway 97 and then an R30 area that includes just the back corner of the subject property. It is zoned residential. It's just split between those two densities between two different zoning districts. The property is located in the 500-year floodplain, which has no particular regulations that apply. It's in the Tarpamlico River Basin and the WS4 PA Watershed Protection Overlay District. As you can see in the aerial photo, the site includes an existing but currently unoccupied commercial restaurant building. That restaurant was formerly operated as the Sharpsburg Restaurant as well as the Highway 97 Family Diner. The building is currently served by both Nash County Public Water and Public Sewer Service. That restaurant, you'll note, operated in a residential zoning district. That's because it was recognized as a legal non-conforming land use, meaning that although a restaurant is not typically permitted in a residential zoning district, this one was lawfully established in that location prior to the county's adoption of zoning regulations. Therefore, it was permitted to continue operation. However, once that restaurant ceased to operate for a continuous period of more than 180 days, it lost its previous status as a legal non-conforming land use, and now in order for it to reopen and operate again, the board would need to rezone it to an appropriate commercial zoning district. The property owner, along with Christy Capoletti of Bacon and Bacon, has submitted this request to rezone the property to GCCU, General Commercial Conditional Use, specifically to permit the reopening and operation of the existing restaurant. No changes are proposed for the site at this time, so the attached aerial photo on the left-hand side of the screen serves as the required site plan. There's no proposed changes to expand or alter the building or the parking area, which you can see in gravel there on the aerial photo. Of course, this is a conditional request, so again, the permitted use of the building or the property would be restricted to a restaurant only, and any changes to the permitted use of the site or changes to the building or the site itself would require re-review and reapproval by the Planning Board and Board of Commissioners. If we consult the land development plan map, you'll see that the property is designated as suburban growth area. The plan supports the development of very limited commercial land uses within this area if they meet specific locational criteria. Those criteria include frontage along and access to a major state highway or secondary road, location at a major intersection, proximity to similar land uses, and spatial separation from non-compatible land uses. The conditional use nature of the request qualifies it as a limited commercial land use because it could only be developed as a restaurant. The subject property has frontage along and direct access to East NC Highway 97, a major state highway. It is not, however, located at a major intersection. It is located in proximity to the existing GC General Commercial Zoning District to the south, which you can see on the zoning map here is an already existing commercial zone in that general area at 11693 East NC 97. And the existing restaurant building is at least 300 feet away from the nearest residence. In terms of spot zoning, this could be considered spot zoning. However, it could also be considered reasonable spot zoning because, number one, the subject property is unique in that it was previously recognized as a legal non-conforming commercial land use. Number two, it still includes an existing and viable commercial restaurant building that's currently connected to Nash County Public Water and Sewer Service. Number three, the permitted commercial use of the property would be limited to the operation of the existing restaurant only. Number four, the request does not allow for any future expansion of the facility or rezoning area without additional zoning hearings and the explicit approval of the Board of Commissioners. 5, approval of the request would be beneficial for the reopening and operation of the existing commercial restaurant building, and that restaurant is anticipated to have no more impact on the neighbors or the surrounding community than when it was last open and in operation. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on June 3rd and recommended approval. The Planning Board considered the request on June 21st. There were no members of the public other than the applicant present to address the board regarding the request. The Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of Consistency Statement A in support of the request, approval of the actual rezoning from a mixture of R20 and R30 to GCCU, and approval of the conditional use permit. This is the same three-motion process as you had on the last item. First, the board will need to adopt a consistency statement. Second, you will need to approve or deny the zoning amendment. Third, approve or deny the conditional use permit. And that would be subject to the same 5 conclusions that we reviewed on the last item and 2 development conditions. Number 1, the property would be approved for the reopening and operation of the existing restaurant only. And number 2, no substantial additions to or expansions of the existing site or facility may be permitted without an additional zoning map amendment reviewed by the Planning Board and approved by the Board of Commissioners. I believe Mr. and Mrs. Capoletti are here to represent the request during the public hearing, and I will take any questions that you have on the staff report.
Any questions for Mr. Tyson at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Tyson. We'll swear you in like we did before if we have any questions. That's okay?
That's fine.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into a quasi-judicial hearing on item 8.
So moved.
And this is in Commissioner Outlaw's district. I have a motion by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a public hearing. If you're here this morning to speak on this item, either for or against, we would ask you to come forward in just a moment, and we will have the clerk to swear you in individually as you come up to speak. Anyone wishes to speak on this item this morning? And if both of y'all been in the same family want to speak, I'll be glad to have you both come up together and sworn in together. I didn't mean to put either one of you on the spot. Well, we gonna break her in this morning then. How about that? Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
James Capoletti, and this is my wife, Christy Capoletti. Also, Mr. Sauls is here as well, if y'all have any questions for him,
Okay.
because he is the landowner.
Right.
We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning. We have been working diligently to open a restaurant since my wife stopped teaching school. She's been a culinary teacher for 5 years at Rocky Mount High School here in Rocky Mount, and now she wants to expand and do more for the community by having a restaurant where she can have the opportunity to not only make the food that she loves to make, but sell it to people to give them a different experience in some things, and also work with the school system and the community college on teaching and continuing to teach culinary students in the restaurant. We have been residents of Rocky Mount for the last several years since we moved here when I retired from being the police chief in Pine Tops, or police captain. I was the captain in charge of daily operations there. I'm also a teacher in Wilson, North Carolina. I teach public safety and law and justice. The restaurant, we've already talked with several of the community members that had questions and addressed any questions and answered any questions for them that they had. We've gotten a lot of support of people. Every day I'm out there, cleaning or scrubbing, somebody will stop in and talk to us about, when are you going to open? We need somewhere to come eat breakfast. We need somewhere to come eat lunch. Or, you're going to be open for dinner and things. So there's a lot of support from the community to go ahead and rezone and reopen, and we just need y'all's help in doing that. And we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about what our plans are or what the plans for the future are with the restaurant.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board? I think I heard the words bacon and bacon. Is that indeed the name of the restaurant?
Yes, sir. My wife is a graduated chef, and but she loves the pastry part of the chef work the most.
Right.
So she loves, I call it just old-fashioned bacon, but she calls it pastry work. But she loves doing all that kind of stuff, and I actually make my own bacon. So my wife didn't want me to feel left out, so she decided to put me making some bacon for the restaurant as well. So that's why we came. Her mother actually came up with bacon and bacon. So
Well, apparently, y'all both knew the chairman hadn't had breakfast this morning, so. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
thank you, sir.
Anyone else here wish to speak on this item this morning? Steve, did you wish to say anything, sir? Be glad to hear from you. I know you called me a while back and asked me to go through this procedure with you. I hope it has been a pleasant experience for you. You've been involved with the county quite a bit the last couple of years. Appreciate your patience, sir. Glad to see you this morning. If you'll let the clerk swear you in.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
The couple talked, they pretty much covered everything, and
Steve, just state your name and
I'm
address for the
sorry.
record. That's okay.
Steve Saws at 7898 South NC 58, Am City. But the couple just was talking, pretty much covered all the bases. I really hadn't figured out why they were glutton for so much work, but that's up to them. But I think they're gonna do a good job. I honestly didn't want to rent it, just a little aggravated with it, but I'm convinced that they're gonna do a good job. And they got the personality, and the community seems to embrace them good, so I'm really pleased with it so far, you know. And that's really all I don't have a whole lot to say today.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here and appreciate your long service to Nash County in the food business.
Well, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Mr. Tyson, I don't know of anything else we got, but do you have anything else you need to add?
No, sir.
All right, this, as Mr. Tyson said earlier, is another 3-motion process. First motion I need is a motion to adopt a consistency statement A or B.
Move for adoption of consistency statement A for approval.
All right, we have a motion for consistency statement A and the items under that. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Commissioner Leggett. Questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Second motion is approve or deny the zoning map amendment.
Move for approval of the zoning map amendment.
Motion by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wells. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries as well. And the third motion is approve or deny the conditional use permit and the items listed under it.
Move for approval of the conditional use permit with supporting findings of fact.
All right, a motion by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries, and you have crossed a hurdle with us today, sir. Appreciate you being here, look forward to it, and maybe you can bring us some bacon right before our meeting in a future month.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. When do you guys expect to open?
We will, now that we have the county's approval, we're going to move quickly as possible to hopefully open in the first or second week of August if we can get everything done properly first. But we weren't going to make assumptions until y'all made your decision.
Welcome to the community. We'll see you there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Y'all have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Steve. All right, next item on the agenda is item number 9. It is a legislative public hearing on the UDO text amendment request A210601 to revise the planning board voting procedure. Mr. Tyson.
This is a text amendment that the Board of Commissioners asked the staff to prepare. It is to amend Unified Development Ordinance Article 3, Sections 3-1.4 and 3-1.5 to accomplish the 3 goals that are on the screen before you. First, to require all planning board members present at the meeting to vote on every matter before the board unless they have been specifically excused from that particular issue or allowed to withdraw from the meeting altogether by a vote of the other members. Secondly, to define the appropriate circumstances in which a member should request to be excused from voting on a particular issue. And finally, and thirdly, to require the board chairman and vice chairman to vote on every matter before the board. This text amendment was modeled on the current voting procedures of the Nash County Board of Adjustment. It is also incorporates the recently revised and broadened conflict of interest standards of North Carolina General Statute 160D-109, which we'll discuss in detail at our next agenda item. The actual text of the amendment is found in your staff report, highlighted in yellow. You'll see the cross-through sections are to be eliminated and replaced with the new highlighted portions. It states that once a member is present at a board meeting, any subsequent failure to vote shall be recorded as an affirmative vote unless that member has been excused in accordance with subsections E or F, or the member has been allowed to withdraw from the meeting in accordance with subsection G. Letter E, a member may be excused from voting on a particular issue by a majority vote of the remaining members present under the following circumstances. Number one, if the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact on that member. Or two, if the landowner or the applicant for the matter being considered is a person with whom the member has a close familial, business, or other associational relationship. And it goes on to define a close familial relationship as a spouse, parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, or grandchild, including step, half, and in-law relationships. Letter F, in the event that an objection is raised to a board member's participation for a particular matter, and if that member does not choose to recuse him or herself, the remaining members of the board can by majority vote rule on that objection. And letter G, a member may be allowed to withdraw from the entire remainder of a meeting by a majority vote of the remaining members present for any good and sufficient reason other than that member's desire to avoid voting on matters to be considered at that particular meeting. Under section 3-1.5, there is a simple amendment there stating that the chairman and vice chairman may take part in all deliberations and shall vote on all matters before the board unless they have been excused or allowed to withdraw from the meeting in accordance with 3-1.4. For all amendments, map, or text, we always consult our land development plan. Of course, the land development plan does not address the specific voting procedures of the planning board, so this request is neither consistent nor inconsistent with the plan. The Technical Review Committee considered this request on June 3rd and recommended approval. Planning Board considered this request on June 21st. There were no members of the public present to address the board with regard to this request. The Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of Consistency Statement A in support of approval of the amendment, and unanimously to actually approve the text amendment to revise the Planning Board's voting procedures. This is a two-motion process, first to adopt a consistency statement, and then to actually approve or deny the text amendment. And this is a legislative public hearing, not a quasi-judicial, so it will be a little more informal than what we've had previously. And with that, I'll take any questions that the board has.
Any questions for board members of this item? Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Entertain a motion to go into public hearing. Moved by Commissioner Leggett, second by Commissioner Combs. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a public hearing at this time for this UDO amendment, as carefully gone over by Mr. Tyson. If there's someone here that wishes to speak, we would sure like to hear you come up, state your name and address for the record, and we'd be glad to hear from you. Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no movement, entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett and Arrington. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. I would just say, Mr. Durham, or you have blessed this previously, and everything we got here suits you, I think.
Looks good to me.
Okay, all right, great. Mr. Tyson, I appreciate you looking into this. I think it's a great change, and quite frankly, I was very tickled to see the planning board agreed with the board of commissioners on all items. But with that said, we need a motion to adopt the consistency statement. Is there a motion to do so?
Make a motion to adopt the consistency statement.
Motion by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. And that includes those items listed. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. The second motion is to approve or deny the text amendment request. Entertain that motion.
So move, we approve the text amendment request.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Arrington, seconded by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Well done, thank you. Item number 10 is a legislative public hearing on another UDO amendment, text amendment to A 210602 to conform the Nash County Unified Development Ordinance to be revised regulations in accordance with the General Statute 160D. Mr. Tyson.
The North Carolina General Assembly has consolidated the previously separate municipal and county enabling statutes for local planning and development regulation into the single unified North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D. So previously, the rules that allowed towns and cities to regulate local development were separate from the specific rules that allowed counties to do so. This action by the General Assembly consolidated those into this one chapter. This is the first major reorganization and modernization of the state's local development regulations since 1905. The reason this law was successfully passed is primarily because it did not intend to make major policy changes, but rather just to reorganize the already existing state regulations into a more efficient, logical, and coherent framework that is easier to use and understand. However, the General Assembly did take the opportunity to make a few what they call clarifying amendments and consensus reforms that all stakeholders involved in the review process agreed were positive changes throughout the state. As a result, Nash County must incorporate into our Unified Development Ordinance a list of small procedural changes that will keep us in conformance with the current state law. So using resources made available by the UNC School of Government, the Planning Board has prepared the following list of text amendments for adoption. Because of the format of today's meeting and the number of these text amendments, we have not provided the specific text of each. However, we do have access to that if there's anything that you would like to look at in more detail. I want to go over the list. Some of them are very innocuous. For instance, the first here, section 2.4, is to simply make sure that all of the items listed have the same definition in every planning and zoning ordinance throughout the state. And so we have conformed that list of terms to have the definitions as found in the state statutes. We have deleted the definition of the now defunct term conditional use permit, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. The Board of Adjustment is now required to only have a simple majority vote for an appeal or a special use permit. It previously required a 4/5 supermajority vote. Under section 3.7, we talked about the broadened conflict of interest standards for the governing board, appointed boards, and we just reviewed what those were for the planning board. So we have incorporated that into the sections that talk about the roles of the governing board, the planning board, the Board of Adjustment, and the planning staff. Section 4-3.1 clarifies that applications for development may be submitted by a landowner, a lessee, an option or a contract holder, an authorized agent of the landowner, or an easement holder. Section 4-7.8 is revised to require the written consent of an applicant or landowner for conditions that are attached to a special use permit in order to ensure their enforceability. Section 4-9 is revised to recognize multi-phase developments, which we have not had one proposed in recent memory in Nash County. Those are long-term projects of 25 acres or more that are subject to a master development plan with a vested rights period up to 7 years. Section 4-10 was revised to extend the expiration date of development approvals and permits from 6 months to a full year. Section 4-15 replaces the term site-specific development plan with site-specific vesting plan. And it is also revised to include the option to extend the vested rights period granted for a development project from 2 years up to a maximum of 5 years when warranted. The board has already taken advantage of that change in the state law for Gideon Solar, our most recently approved solar farm, where the board voted to extend the vested right period from 2 years to 5 years at their request. This will simply explicitly include that in the Unified Development Ordinance for the first time. Section 531 was revised to clarify the acceptable delivery methods for notices of violation, and that is personal delivery, electronic delivery, or first-class mail. Section 7.1 clarifies the 30-day period to file an appeal after an administrative determination has been made. Section 7.7 requires an official who makes an administrative determination that was appealed to be present to serve as a witness at the appeal hearing. Section 8.5 clarifies the time period, which is between 10 and 25 days before a public hearing, that a zoning map amendment notice must be posted on or near the subject site. Section 8.5 revised to prohibit third-party downzonings of property initiated by anyone other than the landowner or the county. And a downzoning would be if it reduced the intensity of what was allowed on the property in terms of lot sizes or in terms of land uses. Anything that would downzone the property must be proposed by either the landowner or the county itself. Section 8.6 clarifies that when a zoning map amendment is adopted that is not consistent with the land use plan, then the plan's future land use map is also deemed to be amended along with that zoning map amendment as well. Section 8.7 replaces the now defunct quasi-judicial process of conditional use zoning with the legislative process of conditional zoning. And this is the aspect that the board will notice first and most often, because it means that when we do conditional zonings like we did the first two items this morning, they will no longer require a quasi-judicial review, meaning that there'll be no restriction on the board's ability to discuss the item with the staff, with the applicant, with concerned property owners, or with each other. There'll be no more concern of limiting that communication for conditional use rezonings. It will be a legislative process, meaning that those who wish to speak at the hearing will no longer need to be sworn in. And I had another point, can't think of what it was. It'll be fewer motions. So like this morning, we had sometimes we have a 3 to 4 motion process. This should reduce it to a 1 to 2 motion process at all times. It should make the occasion where the board has to engage in a quasi-judicial process very rare, much more rare than it is now. And of course, the Board of Adjustment will continue to follow the quasi-judicial process for everything that they consider. But it should lighten the load on this board and make proceedings quicker and a little simpler. Section 8.7 was revised to require the written consent of an applicant or landowner for conditions that are attached to a conditional zoning approval. Section 9-1.6, instead of adopting conditional use districts that end with the suffix CU, we will now be adopting conditional zoning districts that will be designated by the suffix CZ. We revised the table of permitted uses such that land uses that currently require a conditional use permit will now require a conditional zoning district. That includes things like solar farms. Section 10-2.1C was to adopt a specific expedited review process for a particular type of minor subdivision that meets a list of specific criteria. Section 10.6 conforms the subdivision performance guarantee requirements to the current state standards. And what I mean by that is when someone wants to record a subdivision before they have completed the infrastructure such as the roads or the water lines, right now the county ordinance requires them to submit a bond or a letter of credit in the amount of 150% of the estimated total cost of those improvements. The state has now set a cap at 125%. And so this revises our rule to match the cap set by the state. And then throughout, there are numerous references to the old Chapter 153A, which have been updated to indicate the relevant provisions of the new Chapter 160D, and all references to conditional use permit and conditional use districts have been removed. The land development plan is neither consistent nor inconsistent with this request. However, this request is consistent with the now effective NCGS Chapter 160D, and in order for Nash County to continue to regulate local development and remain compliant with state law, we must adopt these amendments. The TRC reviewed this on June the 3rd and recommended approval. The planning board reviewed it on June 21st. There were no members of the public present to address the board with regard to the request. The planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of consistency statement A and approval of the text amendment list itself. This is a two-motion process, first for the consistency statement and second for the text amendment. What I want to highlight is that almost all of these things are procedural changes that are dictated by the state. It does not make any attempt to change any standards that are left to Nash County to decide, such as what are our zoning districts, what are the densities, what are the land uses. And so every decision that the county has been delegated to make by the state remains intact. This just changes the framework slightly within which we operate. And with that, I'll take any questions that the board has.
Any questions from board members?
Just got one question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Outlaw.
On the requirement to change from 4/5 majority to a simple majority, what was the purpose for the 4/5 majority in the first place?
I think it's because, and that only applies to the Board of Adjustment, but I think it is because the Board of Adjustment has to make decisions that make adjustments that apply to particular citizens, and they have to make judgments that that particular citizen is in a circumstance that is different from those around them that have to continue to follow the same standard requirements. And so in order to meet that burden, the requirement was that you had to get an extra member of the board to agree that you are suffering a hardship and that you deserve to have the rules adjusted for you, whereas your neighbors don't fall into that same category. So it was just to be extra sure that someone who was asking to be excused from some requirement was worthy of that decision.
So is this simple majority a requirement of this change?
It reverts to being a simple majority, so.
So you don't have the right to maintain anything but a simple majority?
I think that's correct. I think Nash County doesn't have the right to continue to require the 4/5 majority. Now, a 4/5 majority does continue to apply for variances, but appeals and special use permits revert to a simple majority.
Well, an appeal process means that there's some disagreement.
Agreed.
And so I'm just very skeptical to go away from something greater than a simple majority to deal with an appeals process.
Right.
That concerns me a little bit.
We can look into whether.
I'm not saying it needs to be 4/5, but it would appear to me you would want some greater than a simple majority.
Well, 4/5 is the only next step up, because you only have 5 voting members of the Board of Adjustment at any time. So a 3/5 simple majority, the next step up would be a 4/5, is to require that 4th vote. But we can look into discussing with the county attorney whether the county has the ability to require a 4/5 majority over and above the 3/5 that's required by the state and report back.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
I had a clarifying question.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that these changes are part of a new law that we're ratifying as a formality, not a set of recommendations sent to us by the state.
Right. These aren't recommendations. These are a new law that's been adopted by the General Assembly. And we have no choice but to align our ordinance with those changes if we want to continue to regulate local development in compliance with state law.
Thank you.
All right, other comments from commissioners? Adam, the only one that bothered me the most, if you would put it in the category of Mr. Outlaw's concern, is your reduction of bond from 150 to 125. Because when you get to that point, it's generally going to cost more than 125 to finish something up.
Right.
If we got any latitude on that. And of course, hearing what you said, I don't think we got any latitude, but if you do, I'd like to do that as well.
And I will also say that particularly with the switch from conditional use zoning to conditional zoning, it is very possible that after we go through this process one or two times, that we identify some changes or some tweaks that we may bring back to you as we get more experience. But for now, I think we have a process that will allow us to move forward, and it's very possible as we get more experience that we could see some minor changes that we might bring back to you for your consideration as we get experience with these things for the first time.
And of course, we always have the opportunity to go back to the General Assembly and ask for tweaking of the law.
Right.
Mr. Lamb, you had a question or comment?
I have one question. The Article 10, Section 10.6, the same one you, I believe, just mentioned. You indicated that in Nash County, we have a bond requirement. Is that?
We do.
Is that required, or because it seems like we had a subdivision recently that had interior roads. Was there a bond required?
The bond is only required if they want to record the lots prior to the completion of the roads. So if they complete the construction. But it's only required at the final plat, so it wouldn't be required
In a site
when the
plan.
subdivision is here.
Okay, thank you.
A good example would be the one we tabled today, had some roadfront lots on one side that could be developed fairly early, but it has a requirement of a water main to it, and if he asked to final plat those lots on the right-hand side of Strickland Road, he would have to post a bond for the water line because the water line is not available to the site yet.
One further question. In the last 5 years, have we required any bonds?
We have one that's active right now that was submitted a couple months ago for the interior roads of a subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is this something that we need to vote on today, or can we get some clarification back on the questions before we vote on it?
I'll let the attorney answer that
I
if he
think you
would.
need to vote on it today. It's already the law effective July 1. We're just trying to make our statutes conform with state law. And I think you're going to find the state law probably preempts it, but we will check into it and talk to the school of government.
Okay. Any other question or comment?
Well, I'm going to vote for it. Obviously, if it's state law, I'm going to vote for it. But I don't really like the simple majority. When people are appealing something that is controversial, it needs to have a higher standard than a simple majority, in my opinion.
And likewise, I don't want the county paying for a subdivision to get finished, but with that said. All right, thank you, Mr. Tyson. Entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, a second, please. Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a public hearing on this text amendment proposed. If there's anyone here that wishes to speak for or against any item in this text amendment, we'd be glad to hear from you at this time. Seeing no movement, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Commissioner Wells and second by Commissioner Combs. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? That motion carries, and I'd call for any additional discussion from the board. Seeing none, I'd call for a motion to adopt a consistency statement.
Make a motion to adopt a consistency statement related to the text amendment request.
That's A.
A.
Okay. And a second by Commissioner Wells. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Consistency statement stands approved. I entertain a motion to approve or deny the text amendment request. Moved by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Questions on that motion? Just noted the concerns that we had. Mr. Tyson, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? The text amendment stands approved.
And County Attorney and I will respond specifically to the request about researching the bond amount and the possibility of requiring a supermajority for the Board of Adjustment in the case of an appeal.
Thank you.
I want to take a moment to just thank our senior planner, Adam Culpepper, who spent several months going through the materials from the School of Government and our ordinance and the 160D chapter to do the legwork to make these amendments possible. So I certainly want to thank him for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyson, I'm just a little bit curious, like my mother was, but 1905 is a long time ago. How long has the General Assembly, to your knowledge, been working on this, and what brought it up? I mean, it's just rather odd. I don't know that we've seen anything quite like this.
I think this was probably about a 5-year process, maybe. I think it was the State Bar Association, particularly those members that specialize in land use law, that drove it. And the thing that carried it over the finish line, I think, is the trust that many people in the state have in Professor David Owens at the School of Government, who oversaw the construction of it and was very mindful to make sure that it was bipartisan and had no hidden traps or tricks in it, that it was very straightforward and just a clear reorganization. But it did take several years to make it through the committee process and to be amended by the state legislature.
You don't think we had any General Assembly members that were developers? Possibly. All right, with that said, we'll move to item number 11, I think we're on, which is another legislative public hearing on another land development plan text amendment request, LDP 210601, to support rezoning to RA 30 or RA 20 zoning districts in suburban growth areas where public regulated private community water systems are utilized. I'll let you explain this one to us, Mr. Tyson.
So this is not a text amendment to our ordinance. This is a request for a text amendment to our current land development plan. And as the board is very familiar, the plan recommends the rezoning of property that's in our suburban growth area to either an RA 30 or an RA 20 zoning district if public water service is available. And of course, it leaves to the discretion of the board whether RA 30 or RA 20 is more appropriate. But it requires that public water service to be present because that eliminates the need to have an on-site well and provides you with enough room to have an on-site septic system, making the smaller 30,000 or 20,000 square foot lot sizes feasible. In this particular case, Canterbury Construction Group has submitted this request to revise Section 3, Subsection 2 of the Land Development Plan to also support the rezoning of property within the suburban growth area to either RA 30 or RA 20 when a publicly regulated private community water system is available or utilized. So a publicly regulated private community water system is typically a water system that is based on a well or a series of wells. They provide pipe to drinking water to up to at least 15 connections for 25 or more people for 60 or more days per year. They are regulated for safety standards by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Resources, Public Water Supply Section, just as they also regulate the safety standards of our Nash County public water system. but instead of being connected to our system, they run off of wells. Typically, a community water system will actually be owned and operated by a private water utility company such as Aqua that specializes in that rather than the developer of a particular subdivision. And that's because there are so many certifications and qualifications that you have to provide the oversight for this system, that it is easier to go with an established company like Aqua rather than to try to get those certifications as the developer. So this would afford the same consideration for rezoning to subdivisions that use private but publicly regulated water systems as it does to properties that have access to our current county water system. If you'll look here, this is the actual text amendment. You'll see the change in the yellow. Rezoning to R30 or R20 zoning districts would be supported where public water service or a publicly regulated private community water system is available or utilized. The Technical Review Committee reviewed this back on June the 3rd and recommended approval. The Planning Board reviewed it on June 21st. There were no members of the public other than the applicant present to address the board. The Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request based on two determinations. Number one, the private community water systems are regulated by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Resources, Public Water Supply Section, to the same safety standards as county and municipal public water systems. And number two, publicly regulated private community water systems also eliminate the need to locate an individual on-site well on a residential lot, along with the required on-site septic system and repair area, making the smaller lot sizes of the RA30 or RA20 zoning districts feasible. I had a discussion with the chairman late last week about this request, and a good point that he brought up is that we don't want to adopt this and it become an excuse that developers can cite or a way out of having to connect or extend our existing public water system when it would be more appropriate to do that rather than seek a community private water system. In researching that, I'm going to switch to the document camera. Hopefully we'll be there in a second. There we go. Our Unified Development Ordinance already addresses this. It states that connection of each lot to public water and sewer utilities shall be required if the proposed subdivision is within 300 feet of the nearest adequate lines of a public system, provided that no geographic or topographic factors would make such connection infeasible, or that a specific waiver of this requirement is granted by the Board of Commissioners. So what I propose, rather than the text submitted by the applicant, is this version, which incorporates that 300-foot separation distance that is already in our ordinance. Rezoning to R30 or R20 zoning districts would be supported where county or municipal public water service is available, or where a publicly regulated private community water system is utilized at least 300 feet or more from the nearest adequate lines of a public water system. So that would incorporate the separation distance. Mr. Hampton Smith is the representative from Canterbury Construction for this application. He was planning to be here with us this morning. He notified me last night that he had something come up at the last minute. He's not going to be able to attend. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have on the staff report. If the board would prefer to table this until a time when Mr. Smith can be here to represent the application, we can certainly do that as well. And we could also increase that 300-foot distance, but this is consistent with what our Unified Development Ordinance says currently. And so having said all that, I'll be glad to take any questions or engage in any discussion the board would like.
I got numerous questions, but I'll call on the board first for any questions you may have.
It seems like to me 300 feet is not enough. I mean, I'm just thinking that.
I agree with you, sir.
I think it ought to be 1,000 or, I mean, you know,
A lot
I
of it-
kind of using our,
Right.
you know, we can pull a water line, or the developer can pull a water line from our system, and if you, 300 feet, it's kind of close, and if not, it cuts us out of that water use.
And I think that, I had a similar thought, and I think that what may result from this, or what I would recommend, is if we settle on a distance that we are comfortable with, we should also go back and amend the Unified Development Ordinance to echo the same distance.
Well, actually, Mr. Tyson, I do see a distinct difference between where it's at in the ordinance for another matter than what we would be doing here. So we can certainly have that discussion as well, but it may need to be a higher standard here, and certainly we have Mr. Boone present. I'd like for him to join in the conversation about that, but I see there needing to be possibly two distances involved in that. Anything else, Mr. Combs? Mr. Outlaw?
So I'm just thinking, what land-wise percentage of the county currently has county water? Or maybe a better question would be, what percent doesn't?
Doesn't.
Which is probably greater than the percent that does.
I would suspect that you're right. This particular request is being driven by a desire to develop some property near Middlesex that is, to my knowledge, nowhere near any existing water lines. But they would like to have some greater density than the 40,000 square foot lots that the current zoning would allow. And the land use plan won't support them to come to you to request that unless they can account for the issue of having individual wells and being able to free up that space. And so that's why this particular developer is pursuing this. He has not submitted a plan or identified a particular piece of property that they're looking to develop. So this is an initial step in that direction. You'll recall when we met a year ago and talked about our anticipated growth from the west, that unfortunately that's going to meet areas in the western part of the county where the water system has not extended to yet. So this would be a way of opening the door to some higher density, particularly along the 64 and 264 corridor on the western end of the county that doesn't have the water line expansion that central and eastern Nash County has.
So we're getting ready to receive ARP funding, and from what I understand of that, it looks like the vast majority of that funding would be for infrastructure, water, and broadband, and I'm sure there'll be some other things. So would we be wise to consider what that funding would do to the county coverage before we take a step like this?
I haven't been involved in the ARP discussions.
I mean, why would I hook on to a county system if and I know this may not happen in the next year,
Right.
but if in the foreseeable future, we're going to have a county water expansion, and we will, and why would I hook on to the county when I've got an aqua system in my community that seems to be working fairly well?
Right.
It just seems to me that it would be counterproductive to the expansion of our water system before we knew what that system was going to look like in the next phase or so.
I understand what Mr. Outlaw's saying, but if, we don't know when water lines will be extended. I mean, I know we're getting all this money, but it might be not a year, but 2, 3,
10.
5, 10 years from now. I mean, so we'd be holding up development. But if you just say, if it stood at 300 feet, you'd say, if this guy wants to put in a development, and the water line, the public water line is within 300 or 1,000 feet, then he's going to hook on to that. But if it's not, then he's going to go ahead and build his development, drill his wells, do whatever, and it won't hold up his plans for indefinite amount of
Right.
time.
Why would it hold up development?
Because you don't have no water there.
Well, that's
And you
what-
don't know when you're gonna get water there.
That's what individual wells are for.
Well,
Anybody can develop any property with individual wells.
It wouldn't hold up
With
development, it would
40,000
hold
square
up the creation of smaller lots.
Well, that's the point I need cleared up, Mr. Tyson,
Which
'cause-
seems to be an issue with this board.
well, I was gonna say, Mr. Outlaw, you got to understand this Mr. Cone talking over here now.
Yeah.
Okay. My dear friend, Mr. Cone. I'm in conflict with what you're saying.
Okay.
And the reason I'm gonna refer to a conversation you and I had 2 months ago. I think I called you and asked you about this very item. And is it not factual that we could still develop an R20 lot in the county with no public water, with a well and a septic tank?
You can, but you would have to do it against the advice of our current land use plan. But you can do it.
Okay, well, I don't perceive what we got as against our current land use plan. I think what we got in our land use plan makes it, and I don't quite know how to say this, but it certainly highly recommends it. But I don't see anything that would make us be against it. So I think what Mr. Outlaw's point was, is even without this, these people can develop that section if the environmental health allows it in R20 lots with a well and septic tank. Could they not?
Yes, if this board would rezone the property
Correct.
to a 20,000 square foot
Yeah.
zoning classification.
So all you're doing really, Mr. Tyson, I think is let them know ahead of time that's what we prefer, maybe, but certainly not what we require. Do you agree with that? Because something you said earlier in your presentation made me think you felt more strongly that they couldn't.
I would have a difficult time interpreting the current land use plan, which of course is about to change, and that's the next agenda item we're going to talk about.
Sure.
But I would have a difficult time interpreting the text of the current land use plan to support rezoning below 40,000 square feet in circumstances where there's not a public water system. Could we do it? Absolutely. Would there be legal repercussions? No, because we are not bound to follow the details of the land use plan. We're bound to consult it and explain why we are or are not following it. So we could certainly move on, but the way the land use plan is written, it specifically says to go below 40,000 square feet, you need access to public water. And so the reason for this is that the developer would like to come forward with a request to rezone the property, but he would like to do that with TRC support. And the way to do that is to include the option of a private community water system alongside public water as being in the criteria for what is recommended.
But he could do that without this text amendment,
He could propose it
without this text amendment.
without this text amendment, and the TRC would struggle to recommend approval based on the text of the land use plan.
I think we are close, but I think we'll separate a little bit, but that's not something we're gonna solve this morning. I personally, for the board's sake, would like to hear what the applicant purpose of this was, so if the board might consider tabling it, and there's some other things that need to be worked on, and I think
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Boone needs to have some input on it. Yes, sir.
I would like to say let's table this till we all have more information.
Okay, I have a motion on the table, on the table, to table this. Mr. Tyson, can you give us a specific time, or do you want us to put it back on there when you're ready?
I guess because I can't speak for the applicant's schedule today,
Okay.
let's leave it open, and if we're able to get it together for the August 2nd meeting, we will, but let's not be too specific without being able to consult him.
All right, I have a motion, a general motion to table this item. Is there a second to that? Second. Second by Commissioner Outlaw, Commissioner Cone. Any questions on the motion?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cohn's recommendation of deviating from the 300, maybe going to 1,000 to protect our water system. Is that something we need to discuss today, or is that something you'd rather hold off?
I think I'd rather hold off and give Mr. Boone a chance to, and Mr. Boone, are you thinking like I am, you need some time to evaluate that?
I have a number of concerns.
Okay. And I think the answer to your original question, Mr. Outlaw, is I believe at the completion of the Northern Nash water extension that we currently have underway, I believe we're gonna be somewhere around 38% covered and 62% still uncovered. So we've got a long way to go, and it's gonna get harder every step because we have less density. So we have a motion on and a second. Other discussion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? We'll wait to hear from you, Mr. Tyson, on this matter.
Thank you.
And if you could direct it to the gentleman that we would like to have him here to make the presentation is the reason we tabled it, or one of the main reasons we tabled it.
Gotcha.
Okay? Thank you. That was item number 11, I think. Yes. So we're now on item number 12. And Mr. Tyson, go ahead, sir.
Item number 12 requires no action from the board. It's just an update on our land use plan process. The county's received proposals from 4 vendors to provide professional consulting services to develop an updated county land use plan. Those 4 vendors are Insight Planning and Development, S&ME Incorporated, Stewart, Summit Design and Engineering Services. I'm happy to announce that all 4 proposed costs are under the total amount that was budgeted for the project. The timeframes recommended, or the projected timeframes, range from a 10-month process to a 12-month process because of all the stakeholders who have to be involved. There has been a selection committee formed to evaluate these proposals.
Mr. Tyson, hold on 1 second, Mr. Tyson.
It's okay.
We okay?
We okay.
Excuse me, sir. Go
Okay.
ahead.
A selection committee has been set up that will include Ms. Schatzer, Assistant County Manager, Mr. Boone, County Engineer, myself, Senior Planner Adam Culpepper, and Susan Phelps from Economic Development. The committee is currently reviewing the proposals this week and is slated to meet next Monday, July 19th, to select the consultant, and we hope to award the contract shortly thereafter. And we will, of course, advise the board when that has been done and what the start date will be for that process.
Oh, I thought you said 22. Sorry about that.
If it helps anybody that's down there.
Yeah, it won't,
Okay,
but you can go ahead and do it.
okay. Excuse me, Mr. Tyson. What did you say last, sir? I'm sorry.
The selection committee is going to evaluate those 4 proposals over this week, and we are slated to meet next Monday, July 19th, to select the consultant, and then we hope to award the contract shortly thereafter, and we will advise the board when that's been done.
I'm assuming that this process is similar to picking an architect for a capital project where we don't know the cost until you select the one you're going to use.
Correct.
That work the same way.
And because of the type of service to be provided, the cost is not the only factor that's taken into consideration when choosing the
Fully
vendor.
understand.
But you actually have a cost.
We do have a project, yeah.
It's a little different than an RFQ. It's an RFP, but then you can consider.
Right.
Did you call it an RFQ or an RFP?
It's an RFP.
P. Okay.
And all 4 proposed costs are under the amount that we budgeted.
Okay. Sound like we budgeted too much then, don't it? Other questions on this? I'm personally delighted to see you get to this point, but other comments by commissioners? What did that mean, Ms. Leggett? Okay. Thank you for the update, and we'll be looking forward to hearing back from you on this matter. All All right, if it pleases the board, I'm gonna call for a 10-minute recess at this time. We'll be back in about 10, 12 minutes. Thank you. Call us back to order at this time. We finished up item number 12 before the break. We'll now be on item number 13, which is consideration of an amendment to the noise ordinance. You heard me read in the public comment a email that I got over the weekend, and with that said, I will call on Mr. Durham to start the presentation.
Yes, sir. As you're all aware, the initial proposed changes to the noise ordinance arose out of some complaints by Mr. and Ms. Hardy concerning the use of propane cannons by some members of the farming community that live near them. This board appointed a committee chaired by Commissioner Outlaw. Also, Ms. Leggett was on the committee, as long as various staff and the attorney. We met several times. At one of the times, we met with Mr. Hardy and the members of the farm community, listened to them, and thereafter it was our recommendation that we adopt a change to our noise ordinance to make it clear that propane cannons would be allowed to be used by members of the farm community to try to protect their crops. In reviewing the noise ordinance, I thought there was some confusion in the very first section, which had certain times that the sheriff had to give notices or warnings to people and certain times when they didn't. So I drafted something, taking out the warnings, sent it to the sheriff's office, and Chief Deputy Medina didn't like that, and he asked me to include the warnings back in. So we now require the sheriffs to give a warning first, always, in all cases, with potential noise ordinance violations. Second, we just changed one word. We changed the word construction equipment, bona fide agricultural uses to construction equipment, because we've added a totally separate exemption called bona fide agricultural operations, in which we have delineated that those bona fide farms whereby they use noise projecting mechanisms, including propane cannons, are exempt from our noise ordinance. Those are the three changes. They're outlined in your agenda package. There's also a resolution that I think was drafted by my associate that talks about how important farming is to Nash County, and recommends that we approve these proposed amendments to our noise ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from board members? Any comment, Mr. Lamb? You good? Okay.
No comments.
All right. Well, if there's no questions, the pleasure of the board then.
Move for approval of the noise ordinance amendment.
We have a motion to approve the amendments to the noise ordinance. Is there a second to that? Second. And a second by Commissioner Leggett. Any more questions on this item?
I would, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, I would point out that Mr. Hardy has been given notice that we intended to make this change to the noise ordinance by letter from the manager.
No.
Just to put that on the record.
I called him Friday to make sure he had got notice, and he indicated he did not know it was on the agenda, but I gave him notice, as he acknowledged in that email.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Okay. I have a motion and a second and a little bit of discussion on the notification. I do want to understand that the email that I got was based on the notification being in an untimely manner, in Mr. Hardy's opinion. But with that said, I still have a motion on the floor and a second I need to deal with first. So any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. the motion to amend the noise ordinance is hereby approved. Thank the committee for working on that and Mr. Outlaw for leading that committee. I think you did a good job of that, and Mr. Durham, you and your staff work on it as well. The next item on the agenda is item number 14, which is Detention Center financial schedule, and I would call on Donna Wood at this time to make this presentation. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. What I have before you is the Detention Facility Addition Financing Calendar. The request for proposal responses to the Detention Facility Addition construction project are due Thursday, July 29th. In order to finance the construction of the facility, county staff are requesting approval to move forward with the attached financing schedule. The financing calendar includes dates and tasks related to Board of Commissioners scheduled meetings, as well as distribution of the RFPs to local, regional, and national banks as early as today, July 12th, if approved, and a pre-application call with local government commission to discuss the project financing on July 15th, 2021. The recommendation is to approve the motion to allow county staff to proceed with pursuing the financing for the detention facility addition project.
Ms. Wood, do we normally give, as a board, permission for y'all to take this step?
It's not normally given as so much approval of a motion to proceed. It's normally just sort of a, I hate to say it like this, a nod that we can move forward. And I just wanted to put it before you because we do have a short timeline on this project and the financing. I just wanted to make sure that the commissioners were aware of the calendar that we're moving ahead with, if approved.
Mr. Boone, been involved in it, I'm aware, but we, as a board, went into this thinking it was a $10 million project. I understand now it could be more than that, and I'd like for the board to understand that prior to taking this action. Do you have a feel for an update, and that no number will be attached to this motion that we're going to take, but I don't want to get so far and y'all think it's a $10 million project, and it may be more than that. Could you comment on that, sir? We'll apologize for putting you on the spot.
That the dollar amount that Donna has referenced in her request is tied to the most recent cost estimate that we received from Mosley Architects and the sub-consultant that is assisting them with comparing the engineer's estimate for the project.
Okay.
But certainly we understand the board's desire to keep that expense as close to $10 million, $10,500,000, I think what was authorized.
Right, that's correct.
So we will be looking to value engineer that project should the number come in much higher than 10. But we want to go ahead and have the flexibility if the county decided to go in that direction to fund the project at the level that the engineer's most recent estimate had indicated.
And the number in here is 14 million?
It's not to, it would be not to exceed 14 million.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And that includes the base bid and the add alternate, which was to retrofit one of the dorms with individual lockdown cells.
Right. And I think I've told Mr. Lamb this, but and maybe Donna as well, but I do think in one of the seminars that I attended on the ARP money, I see a window, particularly on the dorm and upgrading it to single cells where we could potentially use ARP money. So if we would all keep that in mind moving forward, if we do exceed what we wanted to spend, maybe we could utilize that.
And since that's an alternate bid, that would be easy to quantify.
Right, yeah, but I think that would fit under that one item that I saw in the one that NACO did. But with that said, thank you, Mr. Boone. All right, questions of the board? I entertain a motion to approve Ms. Wood's request. Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, second by Commissioner Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion stands approved, ma'am. All right, you got item number 15 as well, which is budget amendments, if you would proceed.
Okay. The following budget amendments are presented for the board's consideration for fiscal year 21-22. The first item is with the Grants Department. This budget amendments to budget rapid relief grant funding from the North Carolina State University Foundation in partnership with North Carolina State University's Institute for Emerging Issues to provide digital inclusion services, which would be access to the internet, a technological device to leverage the internet, and digital literacy training in the Nash County community. The project requires a contribution from Nash County of $1,550 and from Cloudwise of $1,550 for a total project of $8,100. The next item is with Rural Transportation Planning. This budget amendment is to budget a grant award from North Carolina DOT associated with the Mountains to Sea State Trail, which is North Carolina's flagship state trail. This trail stretches from Clingman's Dome on the Tennessee border to Jockey's Ridge State Park. This grant is for the connection study for the Neuse River Trail extension between Clayton and Smithfield. This project will be part of the Johnston County area and requires a 5% local match, which will be billed to Johnston County. Nash County is the lead planning agency for the Upper Coastal Rural Planning Organization, who will manage the project, and therefore the grant funding and project will flow through Nash County. It's a $150,000 project. No Nash County funds are required. The next few items are reappropriations of fund balance. They total $103,135. The first item is within the Sheriff's Department. We have 3 appropriations totaling $38,114. It's for community support, K-9 program donations, and DARE program donations. The next item is with Emergency Services, 2021 Supplemental Emergency Management Grant, reappropriations of unspent money. It's with the EMPG Supplement and Tier 2 grant program, totaling $36,030. The next item is with Cooperative Extension. This is to reappropriate unspent 2021 grant funds from Farm to Early Care Education Grant, Master Food Volunteer Program, and the NC Ag Ventures Grant Program, totaling $3,130, and also the DeLeon Carter grant programs, for the farmers market and FCS. The total for that is $3,138. And the final reappropriation is within Aging Services. This is to reappropriate Senior Health Insurance Information Program, the SHIP program, and the Medicare Improvements Patient and Provider Act program, unspent funds. They total $25,853. And the final budget amendment I have is with Federal Asset Forfeiture Funds. This budget amendment is to budget fund balance appropriation from Federal Asset Forfeiture Funds, Department of Treasury, to be used for the purchase of 4 vehicles, including tax and tags, and to upfit the vehicles with law enforcement equipment. It's a request of $159,648, and no additional county funds are required.
Any questions on either of those 7 proposed budget amendments? Either one need individual action, or can we take them all at the same time?
You can take them all at the same time.
Okay. Entertain a motion for approval of the 7 budget items.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Combs, a second by Commissioner Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Budget amendment stands approved. Thank you, ma'am. Item number 16 is board appointments. Stacy?
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
For board appointments for UNC Nash Healthcare Systems Board of Commissioners, we've got 2 seats there that need to be filled. I don't have any new information on possible candidates at this point in time.
I think the hospital has asked myself, the manager, and Ms. Leggett, who is the commissioners on the hospital board to meet right at the end of the month, and that's one of the items to be on discussion. Hopefully, we will have that at the August meeting.
Okay. And also for our Tourism Development Authority, our TDA, we've got 2 vacancies for collector members. I don't have any new information there either.
I would tell you, I have worked on it quite a bit this month. I don't have any quite yet to bring to you. I'm waiting on one application of a person that has agreed to serve, and I'm still looking at another one, so I'm going to do my best to put it to bed in August. We won't have another meeting until January, but they still need to be filled, so I will get it done.
Okay. And then the next is for the Board of Adjustment, and we've got 1 alternate 3 member that needs to be filled, and the note that our planning director gave us was that we currently don't have someone to represent District Number 2, Commissioner Bellfield's district, and I don't have any recommendations at this time.
Okay, any board member have a recommendation? Mr. Belfield did not mention it to me when I went over agenda items with him, so maybe I have someone next time.
Okay. And the next one is for the Turning Point Workforce Development Board. The term for Corey Nixon expired. Mr. Nixon is no longer employed with the Rocky Mount Engine Cummins Company, so he needs to be replaced. Commissioner Arrington is recommending Marcus Whitaker, and his application was in your board packet.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Commissioner Arrington?
Not really. I mean, he's a young man that's very qualified. He's vice president with his company.
And he has agreed to serve?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Of course, he filled out the application, I guess.
Yes.
All right, pleasure of the board. And Marvin, you can certainly make the recommendation if you
Yes,
like.
I'd like to recommend approval.
All right, have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Outlaw, any questions on that motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
Thank you, and I did share that application with Michael Williams with Turning Point, and he is pleased to have him. The next one is for the Braswell Memorial Library Board of Trustees. We actually have 2 vacancies currently on that board, and Commissioner Arrington is recommending James Earl Lyons II to this board, and that application was in your packet as well.
And you got 2 openings?
Yes, there are 2
So you
currently.
got 1 remaining?
If we fill with
Right.
Mr. Lyons, yes,
Okay.
we'll have 1.
Okay, Mr. Arrington?
Yeah. Like I said, Mr. Lyons worked with St. Augustine University, and he's a very knowledgeable young man. I think he'll help with the library board.
Okay.
He's willing to serve. I recommend
All right, have a motion.
that we approve him.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Arrington. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? And that will leave us 1 remaining person on the library board. I know with Mr. Belfield, we took care of one
We did.
already that he felt like he needed to handle, but he's done that, so.
Correct.
Would you just send us a quick email, how they stand district-wise? I know it's on this iPad somewhere, but
Yes,
in an email form to the board.
I will be glad to
Or do
update
you
that.
happen to know which board member doesn't have a recommendation? Or doesn't have a current appointee?
I don't know that, but I think with this particular board, we were trying to focus on the areas of the community where we have library branches.
You're exactly right.
So I'll go back to that email and let you all know
Okay.
how Mr. Lyons fits into that equation, and we can look for something.
Right. Okay, thank you.
The next one is for the Nash County Planning Board. We've got 2 members that we need to fill the seats for there. We do have an application being recommended by Commissioner Cohn, as well as the past vice chairman for the planning board, Jeff Tobias. They are recommending Ethan Curtis Vester, and his application was in your board packet.
All right. Anyone else have a recommendation for planning board at this time? Mr. Combs, you want to address the one?
Well, I think Ethan's very well qualified. Jeffrey Tobias thinks he's qualified. He's an opulent man. He's works at Edwards. He's chairman of Spring Hook Chamber of Commerce. And I would make a recommendation that we put Ethan Vester on the planning board.
All right, have a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Would you also, in your email, update us on that board as well?
Sure.
It's, of course, 9 members in 7 districts. Just let us know how they stand. I think both of the ones that came off are in my district, so I may need to get busy and find somebody, but I'm not sure what that.
Okay, I will be glad to.
Okay.
And then the last one is for the ABC Board. We are trying to fill the seat that Ms. Ernestine Neal was in and was no longer eligible for reappointment. Commissioner Davis has recommended Jacqueline Lewis, and her application was in your board packet.
Good. I did send that to the board earlier and asked for any comments on that. I heard from most of you. Of course, I think all of you probably know of Ms. Lewis. She worked at PNC Bank for a long time and then worked at Consolidated for a long time and certainly works at Cloudwise now. So it kept 2 females on the ABC board as well as 2 minorities on the ABC board. So I just thought she would be a good fit, and I've never known her not to be extremely attentive to anything you ask her to take care of. So I would make a motion to approve her at this time.
So moved. Approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions on that? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Motion carries as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
That it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Can I ask a question? When somebody has served on the board, I've got somebody in mind for the library board that has served on it in the past. Can they come back after a period of time? Do we know?
Let me just get up with Ms. Katie Roche about the bylaws for that board, and
All right, let me
I'll
know.
follow up with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Good question. All right, we'll move to item number 17, which is the monthly tax report, and call on Ms. Sumner. Good morning, right on, ma'am.
Good morning. At this time, I'd like to present the monthly tax report. As you know, this report is designed to keep the board current on activities in the tax collector's office. The report is for your information only and does not require approval. However, it is recommended that you accept the report so that it will be noted in the minutes. And if there are any questions about the report, I'd be glad to answer.
Questions on the tax report? Seeing none, we note that it was presented to the board.
No, thank you.
Madam Clerk. You may as well go ahead with item number 18.
All right, item 18, I do not have any refunds for consideration this morning.
All right, no refunds. Thank you for that report as well.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I knew you were going to, sir, so please go ahead.
I've got it in my manager's reports, but since she's here, I'll go ahead and talk about it. This year's, it appears when we get our June motor vehicles that our tax collection rate will be 99.16%. That's unaudited, but it's pretty reliable. That's 0.10% more than the 99.06 from last year, the highest in the history of the county as far as we can go back. And I just can't say enough about our tax office and their efforts to increase that collection rate. I would also note that if you look at her report, The prior year tax collections really increased this year, much more than the budgeted amount. And therefore, your 10-year outstanding balance is going to be around $2.5, $2.6 million. And it's just remarkable how well the tax office has done to get that tax collection rate up, collect old taxes, and we don't get many complaints from the public about the tax office. It's been a long time since I've had one, but I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Doris's hard work and her staff, and I can't say enough, when people pay their taxes like this, and we need to thank the public too for paying their taxes. But as y'all know, that prevents, that helps y'all not have to raise taxes when we collect 99.16% of our taxes. So again, thank you, Doris.
Yes, and
you do a great job.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the board, and I also like to thank the county manager for all his support, and absolutely Mr. Durham. He is one of our aces in the hole, so we just appreciate him.
Amen. Since you brought up, Mr. Lamb, a couple things, the only time I get a complaint about taxes, if I happen to step on an elevator with a person going to the tax office, they will let you know while they're in the building and they're going to pay their taxes. And I point out to each one of them how long it's been since it's had a raise in taxes, and then they kind of change their tune a little bit and say something to the effect, well, I wasn't complaining, I was just telling you what I was up here for. So, what point well taken.
Yeah, our collection efforts through letters and through letters from the attorney's office, I always joke that as after January 6th, they get tougher and tougher, and then in May, they start getting letters from the attorney, and people say, well, God, we're going to make people mad. I said, the last thing people are going to do is come to the county commissioners and complain about us trying to collect their delinquent taxes.
I don't think we ever had a complaint about that under public comment anyway. It brings something else to my mind. I think I've asked it before. I don't remember the answer. Does this board required to approve write-offs when you finally get to the end and have to write something off?
It's a 10-year.
Well, after 10 years, when they're no longer enforceable, it's an automatic process.
Okay.
I believe it's what, $3, $5? That anything under that?
That's for the regular overpayments, underpayments.
Oh, overpayment,
But the
underpayment.
10-year write-offs is whatever's there,
Yeah.
it has to be written off.
We generally do not write off taxes unless there's good cause shown or they've gone beyond the 10-year period.
Okay. So the board doesn't get notified either way then?
I don't believe so. If we wrote off utility bills, I'm not sure how we do utilities, but I've never known the board to approve the 10-year releases.
Right.
It's just releases where good cause is shown why they should not be levied.
Right, okay. All right, well, great job, and we sure appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Next item is item number 19, which is, thank you, Ms. Wells. Very timely, Ms. Wells, I appreciate it. We are now under commissioner comments. Is there any commissioner wishing to bring anything to the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just be thinking about September mid-month. We need an inside and an outside presentation.
September mid-month, okay.
Be our next one, September the 20th. If you'd let myself or Ms. Schatzer know, that'd be appreciated.
All right, sounds good. Other comments? I just had two things. You know you're gonna get my monthly, building permit, new home starts. It is down just a little bit. It was 27 new homes, that were, permitted in the month of June. But what was amazing to me out of those, because you think, a lot of them are done by the same person, but out of the 27 new home permits, they were issued to 20 different builders. So it shows we have many people interested in Nash County, and I really hadn't ever paid that any mind, but I kept seeing new names, and I actually went back and counted. So you got 27 permits for a new home issued to 20 different builders, which means we should keep that number up quite a bit moving forward. I'm just, because I think we have a number of people that watch these meetings, I'm going to say one more time how important it is for the people to get their COVID vaccinations. You see the board, I will promise you, as quick as each board member could get vaccinated, we did. Many staff members did. I do think, quite frankly, for our administration, we could improve some of our department number of people that we have vaccinated. I've asked a few over the last couple of weeks and was a little bit amazed and disappointed in some of them, and I'm not going to embarrass the department head, but we've still got some work we could do there as well. But for the citizens themselves, I do ask quite frequently, just trying to learn more about it, why people haven't got the vaccinations. And an example, I'll just bring up my barber of 40 years retired this past month and won't be cutting hair anymore. So his wife I had dinner with last night, and I asked her who was going to be in their shop, and she explained to me who would be there. She said, but I want to warn you, there'll be 4 people in here cutting hair, but 2 of them hasn't been vaccinated yet, so you may want to go somewhere else. So it reaches us in every facet of our life, and I watch each time I see a new death. You just never ever see a person pass away with COVID. I'm sure it has happened, but you got to look real hard to find it that was fully vaccinated at the time of the death. And quite frankly, you don't see that many that come down with it as well. So I know the county has done all they could do, and we still got quite a long ways to go. We're a little bit under 50% right on that's totally vaccinated. We did learn that that includes all people in the county, including those that do not qualify age-wise to get vaccinated. So the number, I think, is a little bit skewed and could be presented in a better fashion, but the state chooses how to report those numbers. So anything that you could do, and if you got a citizen that's almost there and want to call a commissioner, pick up the phone, call one of us, call me, whoever, but we will do our best to talk you into it. But with that said, I will turn it over to the county manager for any comments he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for those comments. I know the health department and community activists and health providers have, like the hospital, have continued to try to encourage people to be vaccinated. Unfortunately, our number is not where it should be, and as you said, it's over 99% of the deaths now are among unvaccinated people. So as you said, there are occasions where a vaccinated person has died, but the vast majority of the people getting COVID now, well, 99% of the people getting COVID and 99% of the people dying from COVID, different numbers, have not been vaccinated. So I just want to urge people to get vaccinated. We are going to have an ARP meeting this Wednesday. Feel free to give us any input that any of you might have, or the public. about ways to allocate those funds. We will be bringing recommendations to the board either the first or second meeting in August. That's all I've got.
I think we just have one meeting in August, so we'll,
Oh, we do?
I think that's correct.
Just one meeting?
Yeah.
We'll try to have something preliminarily anyway on the second.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
All right. That completes the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we do closed session prior to lunch? Is what
Lunch
we-
is here, so we can grab lunch and do it.
Do it all at the same
together,
time?
Same time.
Okay. All right. I stirred my papers around so bad. Give me 1 second here. Let me find my agenda again. At this time, I would entertain a motion to go into a closed session. Closed session is for economic development, of course, matters of attorney-client privilege, and the purchase of real estate, potential purchase of real estate by the county. So I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session at this time.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Outlaw, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Combs. Any questions on the motion? Do we think we would have any action, Mr. Attorney, in closed session?
No, sir.
Do not think we do, so we will come back to open session either way and adjourn when that's completed. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries, and we will move to closed session. Prior to going into closed session, the statement was made that we did not anticipate taking any action. We did determine in the closed session there was one item that needed to be voted on in open session. I will note for the record that Commissioner Wells was excused after the regular session before it went into closed session on a medical issue that she had an appointment this afternoon, so she was excused from any future votes. And the one item we discussed was sale of property by the county, and what the county is doing is selling a small bit of property and granting an easement to the North Carolina Department of Transportation on the property on Eastern Avenue that was recently purchased for the community college and the animal shelter. And it was agreed upon by the board and DOT that we would take $15,000 per acre for the property, as well as the granting of 2 easements on the property that we would have remaining for a driveway permit in the future. We did receive a letter from the district engineer, Bobby Liverman, granting those future driveway permits in a letter form, and therefore at this time I'd entertain a motion to approve the sale of the land to DOT under the terms just stated.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Leggett. Mr. Attorney, am I in proper form?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? The sale to the DOT is confirmed. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to close the July 12th meeting of Nash County Board of Commissioners. Moved by Commissioner Leggett, second by Commissioner Combs. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? We do stand adjourned. Thank y'all.